Have you ever wondered if it is entirely possible for us to control the weather, and indeed if that has been the case for some time? Because let's take, for example, January of 2025, so last year, and the wildfires that we saw in California. They were quite anomalous, really, in many regards, but most notably in some of the photographs where we saw decimation of buildings, cars, and certain urban fixtures and fittings. But the trees themselves were seemingly unscathed. And, some of the mainstream scientists say, well, this is simply because of the water content in the trees. So, the fire just somehow magically navigates around them. But I don't really quite buy into that. I feel like the conspiracy theorists are onto something here. And that is that the potential use of a directed energy weapon could be at play. But really, as amazing as that sounds, and of course we've got HARP, high frequency, active auroral research project. These technologies, which are actually slowly becoming more public domain, are becoming more and more understandable. But like I say, the biggest question we're faced with is why would we be doing this? But then, at the same time, why would we sort of stay home and save lives, during 2020 and 2021? It's because we've been told that there's some sort of reason to be fearful of the exterior environment. And so I can foresee a time where perhaps instead of it being this sort of like house arrest lockdowns in your own home, there'll be a sort of urban lockdown, and there'll be this effort to usher people into the cities where people can ultimately be more controlled. And that word control is operative here, because people often ask, well, why? This is where people can't wrap their minds around it. You can't wrap your head around a psychopath or psychopathic institutions, psychopathic motives. They're doing it because of control. The same reason psychotic partners that you might have experienced some time with have done the things that they've done. The same people, the same reason that people are drawn to murder. There are these nefarious things that take place. So I kind of wear my tinfoil hat proudly, because for me it's a no-brainer. It's so obvious that there are various agendas taking place in this world, not notably through 2020, 2021, but increasingly towards the year 2030. So we're not talking about cloud seeding or fog dissipation, which they already recruit at airports, for example. We're talking about technologies that haven't yet really been disclosed to us, and the use of these things by the military industrial complex to ultimately, one, destroy urban centres so they can be rebuilt anew with this new system that's going to be taking place by way of blockchain. And ultimately, this is what Elon Musk is driving us towards, is this open air AI prison, which has been also depicted in shows like Black Mirror, where it'll be this pristine, squeaky clean prison that we're all experiencing. But again, as Aldous Huxley said, and I quote this in every video, the victim of mind manipulation does not know that he's a victim, because his servitude is strictly objective. We've been born into this narrative of totalitarianism, and we've come into it at a certain point, and we can't see the wood through the trees because it's just been our lives. We have to somehow see life in this society from outside the box, but that's very incredibly difficult to do when you were born in that box. But this is what spiritual awakening does. It sort of escapes that prison and is therefore melded back into the cosmos. But I'm not going to be talking about that in this video. Really, it's mostly about the technologies that might be at play here, and also something that Michio Kaku, an American physicist, brought to our attention, the last few years, which is actually that concept by a Soviet astronomer named Nikolai Karshunov. And he had this notion of there being different types of civilization from stages of development. So there'd be a type 0, which is where we are, a pre-planetary civilization that relies on dead plants, aka fossil fuels, and cannot yet harness the total energy output of its home planet. That sounds very familiar to us, right? But then let's take a look at type number 1. A planetary civilization that successfully harnesses and controls 100% of energy available on its home planet, including its weather, oceans, and earthquakes. So I feel like this is actually where, and I'm calling it a breakaway civilization, aka what is really above the head of most people, and indeed even in these political circles, this hidden hand, which has been at play the whole time, and we've been really pawns in a game that we haven't been told about and therefore don't understand, is manipulating things in this very slow fashion, covert way towards a nefarious means that just doesn't make sense to anyone because they can't wrap their heads around psychopathy. We've been insulated from that degree of craziness, that level of insanity. And unfortunately, we have mostly idiots in institutions like, in governments, so they don't really will ever, question these things. But what I'm suggesting is that the others, as I'm calling them, this breakaway civilization, are already fully versed, might even be a type 2, type 3 civilization with these technologies, and we are sort of reverse engineering or being handed these down like toys, and they're being employed against the people because of psychopathic motives. Again, if anyone can tell me what politicians are actually trying to do, and write down on a piece of paper, I'd like to know, because I just don't see anything unfolding that's moving us towards a freedom, abundance, and well-being. Instead, I just see abundance coming to us by way of controlled mechanisms. So these cities that we're going to be ushered into won't actually have direct access on the doorstep to food, shelter, energy, food, and water. Instead, those things will be given to us if we're good little boys and girls and we do our jobs and we don't, we don't think for ourselves and just go along with everything, just acquiesce to what is becoming more and more obvious as the days go by. Then we will get our government handouts and we will get our tokens, we'll get our UBI, universal basic income, okay? As they decimate the jobs and decimate the workplace and our commercial centres, they're going to be replaced by centralised stores, which might not even look on the surface that they are centralised. But of course, when you destroy someone's business, you can now buy them out and there's a hidden hand again behind the system. So this is a very strange time to be alive on this planet, but I feel like there is a disclosure coming. It's getting nearer and nearer towards the realisation that ultimately we've been manipulated on a global scale. And that's the reason why there's still so much suffering today and no one seems to care or do anything about it. Even though the solution is so painfully simple, and that can all be checked out on newearth.land, which is simply about seeing that everybody wants to experience abundance. Whether you're on the left wing, the right wing, or anything in between, everyone wants to experience abundance. No one wants to experience scarcity. So we are the only people that can create that condition in society. So what I'm saying is, let's just come together, and instead of £1 million belonging to one developer who's always going to operate at profit, instead 1 million people with £1 can offer the psychological shift that's required at the heart of the housing industry for us to actually start democratically creating co-housing for people, not profit. And so we can actually start to live more freely on this planet. There's no reason for us to actually pay to be alive, right? There's no reason for us to pay to exist. And this is, of course, what Truman realised, which, in that film, The Truman Show, they show you these wildfires when he starts to realise what's going on. He's trying to get out of the city and he realises, it's very difficult because there's all these distractions thrown at him. And of course, that's one of the tools that they use, is to change the weather and sort of like have all of these people out in suits saying that there's some hazard, there's fires, there's all sorts of things going on. Eventually he breaks free and comes into a spiritual awakening and realises that the whole world that he was living in was an illusion. Similarly, The Prisoner, which was a great show back in the day, if you're familiar or interested in watching these things. But anyway, that's it for this video. Just thought I'd touch on some of the weather, because the weather technologies and weather potential modification technologies, because it's been a scorcher here recently at 39 degrees Celsius in London, which is kind of incredible. But again, is this something that is being naturally driven? I think, it's a balanced perspective. It's not all one or the other. I feel like these technologies are there to be employed and they are being used specifically at certain times. And that's, of course, merged in with natural disasters, which, of course, occur as well. So anyway, I'll see you in the next video. I'm going to go and walk my dog now. So, I'll see you next time.